So what I want to be doing, actually, I'm going to bounce over to different microphone. I'm over here at this table. You can hear me loud and clear. I want to show you some approaches to doing, to adding value in on an object that, that work with watercolor. You can use the same approach for ink. I'll be demonstrating it with watercolor. And we're also going to take a look at adding tone and value with Tombow brush pens. And I have 3 mid to light value Tombow brush pens, and I'll be demonstrating those with you. So if you don't have those, don't worry about it. That'll be kind of a shorter part of the demo. But let's start by thinking a little bit about, hold on, I've got a long piece of paper next to me. All right, let's just kind of think loosely about lights and darks and shadows. I'm going to I'm going to draw a light gray circle here. And you can barely see that on your screen. I'm going to go to a different pen. All right, I've got a little round thing. Now, if sunlight is coming from this direction up here, drawing a little kind of pointer cone. So if it's coming from this direction here, that light is going to be hitting in here. And the area that is pointing off towards that is going to be lighter. The area that is further away from that is going to be darker. So if I'm a photon, I'm going to be hitting directly in here. If I'm hitting somewhere out here, I am, imagine a little photon coming along like this on the side and going smack into here. It's hitting directly into an object and lighting that up. The more that a photon is kind of grazing across the side of something, then it's not really illuminating that as directly. That's why in the summertime, when the sun is more overhead, it's more intense. And in the wintertime, when it's coming in at more of an oblique angle to you, say in here, that is, it's not as intense sunlight. But the result is that also the shadow on the object is not going to be as, the light on the object is not going to be as intense. The shadow will be stronger. Now, I'm going to so if the light is coming straight from the side of an object, then you've got a light side and a dark side. If there is an object behind what I'm looking at, then some light comes, so then you'd of course be casting a shadow on here, but some light is also hitting here onto this object that is behind here, whoop, and bouncing back onto the dark side. That's what's called bounce light. And so in an object that is that I'm going to be lighting here, instead of having this light come straight on it, I'm going to bring my light a little bit so it's sort of shining on the surface. So the dark side is going to start over here. It's going to be over here. All right. I'm going to leave a little bit of, if this is on a surface, I'm going to leave a little bit of light down in that shadow side. And then so I've got my area that gets the light. I've got my area that gets the shadow, and I also have my little area of bounce light. I'm going to put in an area of slightly darker shadow, kind of in here. That's what I'm going to call my core shadow. My core shadow is sort of the darkest part of my shadow. On an object that didn't have any reflected light on it, that would be all the way out to the edge. But if there's reflected light on my object, then then that core shadow doesn't actually get all the way to the far side. Switch pens here. So if this area up in here, we've kind of then have a gradation of light to dark. The other thing that may happen on this is that if this object is really shiny, besides the zone of this that is generally lighter and the zone that is generally darker, there will be a specific spot that gets a reflection of the light. So if there is one little light source here, and it's a really shiny object, you will actually get a spot on here where you have a super bright reflection. That's called the highlight. So I used to think that the highlight, so this let's actually name some things. Here's the core shadow. Shadow. I've got my reflected light. Also called the bounce light. That's going to bring a little bit of light into the dark side. This edge here where light turns to dark, that's called the terminator. And there is the highlight, which is the reflection of the light. Right now I'm drawing a dark line around it, but there's not going to be a dark line around where highlights are. But I want to distinguish the highlight from the, what is the, no, my brain is totally blanking. There's a general term for the light side, the core shadow versus the the light part. That will come to me in a little bit when I'm not really thinking about it. But so this zone out here that is generally light will have one little spot on it that is this super bright highlight. The highlight is not necessarily in the center. Oh, the center of the light. That's called the center light. See, and center. I remember now. And center light is this whole sort of zone of light that is out here. But the highlight will be the super precise little reflection on that. So if I am drawing something that is really shiny, I'm going to want to be sure to have enough value in this center light that you can see the highlight. If it's not a really shiny object and highlights are not a big part of it, then I can have this this whole zone can be lighter. But I would want to be putting value into that or color into that in order to show that is a highlight that is distinct from the center light. I used to think that the center light and the highlight were the same thing. I kind of conflated them. The center light is relative to where the light is. The highlight is a spot that is relative to where the light is, where that light hits the surface and then bounces back to your eye. So as I move my position of my head, where I see the highlight will move. So everybody sees the same center light. Everybody sees their own highlight. It's kind of like the difference between a shadow and a reflection. Everybody sees a reflection of, say, a stick in the water. Everybody is actually looking at a different reflection, but everybody would see the same shadow. So how does this apply to drawing a skull or an object? Depending on where I place my light, I can get different parts in shadow. So on this one here, there's lots of shadow area, and there's only a few little light areas. So you look at where this one is light and where this one is dark. This one over here, there's much more that is in the light. And same with say, this one down here, there's lots of white space. Right? What a general strategy to do is to figure out what the proportion of lights to darks are going to be on your object. So is it going to be mostly in the light? Right, so there's lots of bright places, a few little darks, or is it going to be mostly in the dark, where there's going to be a few little highlights? If you're making up your light source, as we're going to be doing with our lion skulls, you get to decide where those are. And so what I'm going to do is a couple of watercolor demos to create one that is going to be mostly light and one that will be mostly dark. And you're going to see that it's fun to get to decide what those zones are. If my object is mostly light, I'm going to create a little value range for this character here. Right, if this is its value range, it's going to be mostly light with some middle value and a little bit of dark. That's going to be much more visually interesting than if there are equal amounts of each of these. So something that makes a picture interesting visually is if there are, so with this, the darks will be accents. If they're all the same, there is no accent. On this one over here, what I'm going to do is its value range is going to be mostly dark. So what it's going to be is there's going to be a little bit of light, there's going to be a lot of mid value, and then I think I'll give it also some amount of dark accents. So you get to move this dark and light slider on your object, and how you do that will really make your object look different. And both are cool effects. If I want to go get something that's more just sort of overall brighter, I will do this. Overall lighter, I will do this. So let's take a look now at how that looks. I'm going to get out a little set of watercolors here. And what I want to do is to pick a color that is light value. sorry, not light value, that is a dark value color that allows me to go to really, 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 really dark. So for instance, if I try to do this with a color like quinacridone gold, that doesn't really go dark, I'm not going to be able to punch in my darks. But what I'd like to do is I want to learn on my palette what paints I have that really, really go to a very dark value. And on this, I'm going to show you a few of the ones that I have. Go to a dark value. So I have a purple here, Windsor Violet, and it goes to a very dark value. The problem with it is, so there it is, it's dark value. As it starts to kind of come out, it's going to be very, very clearly purple. And if I want a purple drawing that goes to dark, that's great. But that purple can be pretty overpowering. People will be going like, wow, you sure made a purple skull. So they won't be necessarily thinking about that as a, they'll start to sort of interpret that, some of that as like the local color of the object. The same is true with, I've got a wonderful blue here that goes to a very, very dark value. You see how nice and dark that is? When it comes out, it makes this very, very rich blue, but people will really kind of see that blue. But if that is the effect that I'm wanting, if I want to get that, I can. I also have a green called Perylene Green that has a dark value. Right? I will often use this for deep dark woods and things. And when it lightens out, you can see that it is a dark green. So all of these go to a very dark value, but the sort of end color can be distracting to people. My favorite brown, if I'm going to look for a brown, is Bloodstone Genuine. That's a Daniel Smith color. And it makes a really nice dark. And it comes out to a dark brown, but it's a little bit more neutral. If I'm making my value study with this, it's going to be much less distracting than one of those other three. I want to show you a couple of other colors that are also sort of good and not and less distracting. One is Shadow Violet. This one doesn't quite make as deep a dark, but it kind of comes to a purpley gray. Another is Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray is in sort of dark form, feels very, very black. And when you dilute it out, it will still look black, but with a slight little bluish tint. Kind of, there's a cool blue tint to that. And the final one is Neutral Tint. And Neutral Tint is also a black. And as I get it more diluted, it is, it's not, see, when these are up against each other, you can kind of go like, oh, I am seeing a real blue in this. This one will feel a little bit more, well, neutral gray. So I'm going to do a demonstration where I'm going to use probably one of these here, because these ones have just too much of a distracting local color. So I think I'm going to use, I'm going to do one with neutral tint. No, Payne's Gray. I'm going to do one with Payne's Gray, and I'm going to do one with Shadow Violet. And we'll see how those look. So again, not all colors really allow you to go to a very dark value. That's why I like these ones. And of these ones, I like these ones here just because they're a little bit more, they don't say like, look, I'm green or blue or purple. You'll look at the shadow, not the color. Let's start with this one here that's mostly light values. I'll jump down on it. And what I want to do is in this, there's a general rule in watercolor. You start with the lighter values and you build towards the darker colors, the darker values. So I'm going to be doing that here. And I am going to, let's see, I'm going to, on my palette, I'm going to mix up a little bit of shadow violet. And if I would put that down on my paper, it would be too dark. All right, so on the back of an envelope here, whoops, where's that envelope? There it is. Yeah, that's really dark. So I'm going to give this, my water brush, a squeeze, get a few drops of liquid out there and make a sort of lighter pool and test that. Okay, that's better. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be thinking of which way my light is coming from. And on this direction, I'm going to have my light coming towards the skull from this direction. So that means that there's part of, so there'll be a lot of parts here that are kind of getting light. And so things that are really going to be hit directly by that light are this surface in here, part of this surface in here. This part of the jaw down here will get some light. And as you kind of get in areas that are more sort of curved around or wrapped around, they're going to be getting a little bit less direct light. So test my color off on the side. And I'm going to start by putting a light value down into this beastie's eye socket. And this little...
Could you please move the paper a bit? Oh, thank you.
Thank you. And as I come around, I'm going to wipe some paint off my brush so I have a cleaner brush. And I'm just going to kiss that edge of it. And that makes that edge fade out rather smoothly. So what I'm going to be doing again is I'm going to put down a little bit of color. And then if there's part of that that is on a sharp edge, I'm going to keep that as a light, as a hard dark to light change. But if it's going around a rounded object, I'm going to clean my brush and just stroke the edge of that a little bit, not with a really wet brush, but with a damp brush to feather that edge. So let me do that around the back part of the skull here. All right, so there is a kind of hard sagittal crest that comes up in here, and then that comes around this part here. And I clean my brush, and I am going to round that, smooth that edge. So I want the edge that is close to the light here to sort of fade to light. So if I do that with a light brush, a clean brush in there, I'm just bringing water and I can make that edge blend light into dark. Down in here, we're going to get darker Test my color, too dark. Test my color. Okay, better. We're going to get darker in here. And I'm going to bring a little bit of water into the edge of that to smooth it. There is a zygomatic arch here that curves across. And it the bottom edge turns down sharply, so that will be in the stronger shadow. And then the whole zygomatic arch towards this direction here, that's the cheekbone, curves back towards here. So this part will be in shadow. So I want kind of a crisp shadow on the underside of this and a blended shadow back here. So let me put in that blended shadow first. I'm going to leaving a little bit of white at the outer edge of it to be my reflected light. I'm going to put some dark paint into there, and then I'm going to clean my brush. With my brush still damp, I'm going to kiss this edge of it and blend that out. On this little hard edge here, I'm going to clean my brush and just come along and tickle it lightly. And I get a little glow there that's not hard edge. So I can play with whether something is a hard or soft edge. Let me just demonstrate that down here off the lion for a second. If I have a little blob here and I then clean my brush while it's still wet, I can come in and I can get that to be a smooth transition. There's kind of a hard edge in there. So I think I'm going to have to get that damp and fade that a little bit. There we go. Now, different types of paper work different sorts of ways. On some types of paper, they're sort of referred to as a thirsty paper. And sometimes the stuff that you get off your out of your kind of computer printer paper bin is very thirsty paper. What thirsty paper does is it sucks up a whole bunch of paint the minute you put the paint on it, and then it's harder to blend. So you'll find that some types of, if you're having a hard time doing this at home, it may be just that the type of paper you're using is really thirsty paper, where once the paint hits it, it goes and sucks in all that paint. I'm going to get a little more of a hard-edged bottom of the zygomatic arch here. There we are. I'm going to leave that hard-edged instead of blending, because I want it to suggest that there's a sharp angle on that bottom side of the zygomatic arch. When I first put this shadow in here, I could have come in there while it was still wet and added a little bit of darker in there. Now looking at this, and especially compared to this, I'm thinking I really do want a little bit more dark going down into that eyeball. If I do it while this paper is slightly damp, I might get weird effects. To get a little bit more control, I'm just going to wait till that completely dries, and then just imagine that I am painting not into dampness on the paper. I've got kind of an unknown amount of dampness on the paper there. Because I don't want to make a mistake with that, I'm going to let that dry completely, but I'm going to come back in there in a little bit and Stroke that. I'm going to get a little bit of light on the top here. I'm going to get a little bit of shadow on the side of this nasal bone and soften the top edge of it. I'm going to get darker inside that nostril there. And fade that out. Clean my brush again, really clean brush. And then to get that fade from dark to light. There's a little depression here, little cavity there. I'm going to put a little dark shadow in there and then have a short fade into light. So what's nice about this, if you don't have paper that's really thirsty, is that you can sculpt each one of these little shadow zones. I'm going to put a bit of texture in here. There's a bit of a depression right in here where my brush tip is, and then over the top of these teeth here, there's a little, this part here where this tooth sticks up. It's this part sticks up, so I'm going to put a little bit of shadow on either side of it. But I'm going to try to have these shadows be not too bold. So I still want this overall tooth, this overall skull to read as a light value thing. I'm going to get clean water on my brush and stroke the edges of these. Again, if your brush doesn't allow you to kind of blend the edge of something, probably it's the type of paper. I'm coming in the back, sort of deeper inside the mouth here, and back of that jaw. I'm going to go a lot darker. And that sort of dark zone is going to then fade. I wanted to test my color on the side here. Put a little bit of dark shadow in here and here. And I want those to have softer edges, so I clean my brush, kiss the edge of it, clean my brush, kiss the edge of it, and then I get things that have a much softer edge to it. I think I probably can get some dark into that eye socket now. So there's going to be a darker part down in here, and then I'm going to bring dark right up to the edge, suggesting that there's a very sharp curve in that. And then I'm going to fade my dark out again. Oh. Clean brush, kiss this edge, and it fades. Now the sun is going to be casting a cast shadow across here. And that's going to give this a sharp edge. Cast shadows don't fade. There's also this part deep inside here that is going to be want that to be a darker value. Make a difference, a distinction between what's called a cast shadow and a form shadow. So the form shadows are the ones that are on the bone and to sort of help you sort of see the shape and the form of that bone. And the cast shadow would be a shadow dropped down from some other object. I do want this stuff back here to be darker. I want some form shadow on the underside of this jawbone here. Actually, let me show you an alternate way of applying this. Sometimes what people will do is if they know their shadow is going to be in here, instead of putting in the shadow and then softening the edge of it, people will sometimes put in a little bit of water on the upper side where it's going to be sort of fading into the light, and then put the other shadow in below that, and where those touch kind of gives you a softer boundary. I tend to put the paint down and then sculpt it with clean water because I like the control that gives me. But sometimes this approach can give you some very nice effects, letting paint sort of naturally bleed the way that they do. I'm going to put a little shadow along the edge of this, but leaving a little bit of white space on the bottom side. That's where it's a little bit of bounce light is going to be coming in. Some value on those teeth. I think that I'm going to put a little bit of value on this surface of these teeth here, the part that is kind of pointing down. So the skull is mostly white, but I have left areas of, I've left, a few areas of middle value. I think that for just a little bit more accent to make this a more interesting picture, my guess is that if I come in here and I really put in some darker values in a few places, that will just give me a little bit of kind of extra. I think I'll make it a more interesting picture, a little bit better value range. Soften this edge in here. Maybe a little bit of darker in that eye socket. Soft edge. Then I'm going to stop. So this, again, the value range, I decided at the start is going to be mostly white with some gray and a few dark accents. And that's what I've got. But that doesn't have to be the way that I sculpt this. Let's say it was a weaker light, so most of the thing was really in shadow. I'm going to get a very different effect. I'm going to get some areas in here and up here that are going to catch some light, some areas in here because this cheekbone really sticks out. Maybe part of the teeth here a few parts of the jaw, but most of it is going to be middle value. So I'm going to start by defining the edges of the light space. And actually, I'm going to switch colors here. I'm going to move over to some Payne's gray. And you'll see that Payne's gray also does a good job. It will give you a different effect. So here's color of Payne's gray. Oops, we're off the screen. Let me put this up here. I'm going to move tools around a little bit. There we are. All right. So I'm going to start with just some middle value or sort of lighter value, Payne's gray. And what I want to do is define where this is going to be really getting light. So there's going to be a little bit of light right up in here on this nose bridge. There is going to be a little bit of light that is going to be hitting down in here. And maybe a little bit of light in here on this surface. I'm going to have, there's going to be light that is going to be cast up into here and also onto part of the zygomatic arch in here. But this other area in here, this is all going to be dark. So look at this. I'm restricting where the white is, but I'm being intentional about leaving. I want to leave, think of ahead of where do I really want this skull to be white? And then I'm going to be really intentional about leaving those areas white, because with watercolor, I don't want to come back with some opaque white later on and do it. So this whole kind of back of the skull, maybe the part of the crest up there might catch some light. I am going to make this sort of my middle dark value. And you see that this sort of blue gray gives you a different effect than you have with the than you have when you are drawing with the, what was that, shadow violet. Down here in the jaw, I'm going to have light maybe hit some in here, maybe a little bit along this part of the jaw, but this jaw is going to be mostly in, I haven't really decided to myself how it is going to, what I'm going to do with the teeth, so I'm going to leave those white for now. So maybe there's some white along this edge of this, and then all the rest of this. Depending on the type of paper you have and the type of paint you're using, you can sometimes go in. So I've got some pretty hard edges on this. If I want to soften some of those, take a look at this blotch up here. If I wet that with a clean brush, I can actually soften some of my edges with a clean brush. And so I'm going to try that right around this side right here, and maybe a little bit in here. So I'm just going to wipe some clean water across that. wipe it up into that. Clean my brush again. And I've just softened that edge. Some paper, for instance, very thirsty paper, it doesn't let you get in there and soften any edges. So if you try it and it doesn't work, again, that very often it's a paper related thing. Now, what about some real darks in this? I want darker than that. I want this to feel really good and dark in there. I want, now there isn't a, cast shadow this time. But now let me soften some of these. See what would happen there? I just take my damp, clean brush and I can bring it up into here and I can make some of these edges softer. So I put in some pretty harsh paint there. Looks yucky, right? Clean brush. I can really get in here and move some of this stuff around and sculpt it. Now, there's not going to be, there we go. I'm going to put a little bit of dark into this eye socket here. Now with a clean brush, shape and form some of that. I want dark on the underside of that zygomatic arch, the cheekbone. I think I want to bring some even darker values up into the side of the face here. So I'm getting, this is mostly dry, but I'm going to get in here and put some dark around there and then fade that clean brush here, get my brush all clean again. Oh, wanted to keep that white, but I let some dark it into there. So while it's still wet, I'm going to try to push some of that paint out. By restricting this to just one color, I make the choices that I have easier. I'm not worrying about color and value. You see that just thinking about lights and darks and the values in here, there's a lot for me to keep track of. If I were also thinking about color, this could get really, really confusing really, really fast. So I advise people who are starting off with watercolor to do landscapes and bird studies and all sorts of things as monochromatic studies. So those are just, you pick one color and you're just worried about lights and darks. And then later on, you can come in and add, you know, do drawings with color and also with value. But at the start, just focus on the value. Because even if you're looking at a black and white photo, that still reads to describe the shape and the form to you. So here is one that is mostly dark with a few little lights, and one that is mostly light with a few little darks. So you're in charge of the light source. You can play around with these things. Think of yourself as carving those things. Like this little sharp edge in there, that's a little bit too harsh. I think I'm going to smooth that out. I may still be able to. Let me see if on this paper with this paint, if I can do that. I'm going to just clean brush, stroke over that a little bit, and okay, that's smoothed out. Okay. Are there any places I really want to punch in some darks? I'm now just getting on the tip of my brush, just super dark paint. And I'm going to put a little bit of that as an accent up in here, a little bit of that up here in the nose. I'm going to put a little bit of that back here. Do I want some in the eye socket? Maybe. Let's find out. I think I better stop. There's a tendency to keep messing around with something until you overwork it. Oh, I want this to be a crisper little edge in here. I'm going to get, that will be one more thing that wants to be done. Okay. So there it is. That is a, so value studies done with wash. You can also use just India ink for washes. Be sure to clean your brushes really well because India ink can, you really don't want it to dry on any of your brushes. But before we go, I wanted to show you an approach to getting effects like this that are really, really fast. And for doing that, I'm going to be using this set of 3 Tombow pens. So Tombow pens are interesting pens. They have a small nib on one side, and on the other side, there is a big brush tip. And I have 3 of varying darknesses. The darkest I have is called an N75. I have 2 light value ones that are pretty close to each other. The N95 is the lightest, and then the N65 is a little bit darker than that. If you were only to get to maybe the N75 and the N65, but this does allow you to get to some values just a little bit lighter than that. So let's take a look at one more. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first use the lightest, then the next lightest, and then the darkest. And you're going to see that this bit of business can go really fast. And so I'm going to start here in the nose, and I sort of paint along in the nose, on the side of the nose. Any place that I know is going to be dark, any kind of dark, it's okay for me to put this in, because I know later on I can always come over and make that darker. And because I'm using my lightest value here, there's no harm in going twice over an area with a pen. So you see, this is just a very smooth, light pen. Oh, I want to get more of a sense of this ridge on the top of the head. I didn't really do that up here on this one. But there's a little ridge there. There's the back side of this. Inside of the mouth here. And with the Tombow, if you give something a couple of strokes, it gets just a little bit lighter. So see, just with that was one pen, and already there's a sense of some dimension coming out in it. I'm now going to move a little bit lighter. I've now picked up my N75. And oops, is that my, so here I've got this one. Yeah, okay. So I've got my N75, and I am going to come along in some of those areas and just, I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Cool. And you can see more sense of volume popping out from that. These are blendable, which means that I can take my lighter value one and I can come in here and smooth that out. I can come in here and smooth that edge out. You see that little rough edge right there on the top? I can come in here with the light value one, a couple of strokes over that, and I've blended that together. And the final one that I have is my darkest value one. I guess that was, here's N95. Now N65 is my darkest one. But already this little skull, it's with just a few pen strokes, it's starting to pop. So I'm going to put in a little bit of extra dark here, a little bit of extra dark here, let's darken up this eye socket. I want this back of the jaw here to be, you can see these pen strokes really, really clearly, right? But not you, right? And you're thinking like, oh, those are really too harsh. Don't want it to be that harsh. Wish it wasn't. Well, don't worry, because we're not finished with this yet. I put those darks in. Then I'm going to go back to my N95. So it's not just good PPE, it's a great pen. And stroke that out, stroke on here. And you see how, let me get my N, that a little bit darker. See all this rough stuff down here in the jaw. Go over that and look at how it softens it out. I'm gonna come over here. Ooh, that was neat. I'm going to soften some of this stuff here in the eye socket. There's a little hard line there, and I'm going to get rid of that. So that was carving this skull with Tombow pens. And you can see that we got, they're fun and they're easy to control. You can use they also make a Tombow pen that is just a colorless blender that just has no pigment at all. But if you're doing the stuff with this light value one, you really can use this for that. So I did this one mostly as a light value drawing. And, but before I go, what I wanted to do is just turn this into a dark value drawing, also with the Tombow pens. See that you could do this, but then you can keep monkeying with it. Like, let's say I want this to be something that is mostly dark value. Okay, then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna have up into here, this is all gonna be dark in here. This is gonna be dark down here. I am going to get this dark, maybe leave a little bit of light value back there on that part. Ooh. Darkest one, middle light value one. Maybe I want to just kind of get in here and make this even darker. Now I'm going to get my lightest value one. That is my N95. Smooth some of that together. And it's now much more of a dark value skull. Ooh, let's actually get some real darkers in here. Let's push that too. It's fun to mess around with these things like that. You realize that the drawing, you can kind of push it, you can pull it, and you can make it do all of these interesting things with light. These pens are great for playing with the light. Yeah. Oops, I keep sliding that off the side. So there's various sort of stages of done. And one last little thing you can do for extra details is if there are edges that you want to pick out. I have a white gel pen here, and I can put in just a few little hints of maybe along that crack there. And a little bit of texture. The gel pen. And then back, I've got this guy. I have my two brush ones, and then this one, it just happened so quickly, didn't it? That happened fast. That's because combos are fast. I hope that this was a useful exercise in looking at I'm going to change cameras. There I am. Change microphones.
I hope that this was a useful way of looking at playing with light and shadow. The thing that I think is nice about having these printed out lion heads is that you're not worried about messing up this drawing that you have spent a lot of time laying out. And you just have a chance as an exercise to mess around with lights and darks and ways of showing that on your page. I can make it a light value one. Now let's make it a, what the heck? Let's make it a, and then you're not in that state of like, oh, I don't want to like mess this thing up. I like the way that one came out. It feels much more like an exercise, which is what it is. This is training for all the rest of the stuff that you want to play with. And when you have a drawing that you can just focus yourself on, like, I'm going to work on my stipple, or I'm going to work on my using the brush to try to get these light and dark values. The pressure is off. And so I want to encourage you to play with this, print some out. You can actually, if the sort of paper in your printer is really thirsty paper, what you can do is just take a sheet of other paper from whatever kind of drawing pad you have, where you like the texture and the type of the paper, and put that down on your tear one of those out, put a piece of 8.5 11 over it, and use that as a template to cut it out. feed that through your printer. And then you can get that lion skull printing out on any type of paper that you want. And that will allow you to be able to play a little bit more with the watercolor blending effects if you were having problems with thirsty paper. And most importantly, have fun with it. There's no right or wrong way to do it. The more you mess with it, the more you're going to get an intuitive sense the way that your tools work. And you're going to find techniques and approaches that feel really good for you. And it's going to be fun. So thank you folks so much for being here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this over to our discussion forum. And let's start with anybody that has questions, thoughts, or comments about what we were looking at specifically in this workshop. And then if you folks have other things that they wanted to say, perhaps journal pages or ideas or what's inspiring you, you wanted to share with the rest of the group, there will be an opportunity for doing that. So I'm now going to my gallery view, and I'm going to bring on Ann Chadwick from Point Blue Conservation Science here. Ann, it's great to see you. Hold on a second. We'll allow you to unmute in just a moment. There you go.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much. This is so fun. I love just being able to play and not worry too much about it. And one question I had was, so I just traced this or kind of copied
Great.
into the journal. This is the John Muir Law's fabulous journal. Thank you very much. All the great
Stylish,
stuff.
yet functional.
Yes. And I felt like I was overworking this with the Tombow pens. I just had two, I guess the N95 and the N65.
Great.
And to get this really dark, I went a lot of times over it, and it felt like I was wrecking the paper, right? It was sort of pilling up and.
Yep, so the way around that is to let it dry between coats.
Patience. Ha.
And so paper, this paper can take a lot of abuse, but at some point it is going to start to get pilly on you.
Yeah.
And when you see that begin to happen, just stop, wait for it to dry, and then you will be in good shape to, I like how you did the dark value and the light value ones here. You see how they both really describe that form.
Yeah, and this I was just playing with some colored pencils while you were doing your watercolor demo, because I wasn't doing watercolor. So that was also fun to kind of do some blending and figure out different values and color combos. So I have myself a purple skull, but that's okay. And then this was found object picked up on a walk, and it has lots of little, I guess, lichen and, well, you tell me what's in there.
Yeah, I'm seeing lots of little lichens all over that surface.
Yeah, this is just some oak bark that, I was just out walking and picked it up. So I also did that during this, and I was trying to get the shadow and a little bit of contour.
Yes, I see the curve in it. That curve in it shows up really well because of those cracks that you've let follow the contour.
Yeah.
Those are such a gift to us as artists.
Right.
Because they define the form.
Yeah, I might play with it a little more, but as I was like trying to finish it up, you were saying, and don't overdo it. And I thought, well, okay, I'll let that rest for a little while.
That's
so anyway, lots of fun. Thank you so much. And I appreciate all you do. And I hope everybody can support Jack's work, either through a donation or through doing something kind in your community. So
thank you so much, Ann. I really appreciate that. And also for folks who haven't met Ann before, Ann is with Point Blue Conservation Science and does amazing work at helping people research and protect critical bird habitat and wildlife habitat around the planet. And we'll be partnering with you in past and we did in past workshops and more to come. We need to get together and hatch some wild schemes.
I'm up for it. Totally.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. That's really great. It's really neat to look at other people's journals and see what they've been up to. I would like to bring on Joni James. Joni, good to have you here. Oops, I'm sorry. I just messed with you. We're gonna have, there we go. And add you into the spotlight. Hi there.
Hi. I just wanted to verify with the Tombow pens between N75 and N95, which one's darker, lighter? Because I'm wondering if someone switched the caps on.
Yeah, actually, I went into an art supply store just the other day because I needed a few new Tombows and for this presentation, and there were a bunch in there which people had just a lot of the caps look so similar to each other, and there were a number that had the wrong caps on them. So you're wondering about which ones?
75 and 95.
So N95 is the lightest.
95 is the lightest. Okay. 75 is darker. Yeah, the caps don't match up. All right, thank you. And I was wondering if you could explain, I didn't quite understand how you blend with them, because it seems like when I do that, it just looks like a really dense mark rather than.
Sure. Let me just do part of that. I would experiment with that on some different paper surfaces. But so here is the page. We're going to zoom down. Let's say I had some dark coming down here in the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of just put a few little lines out, hatching out that way. I can then take my N95, or they do make one that is just a straight up colorless blender. So this dissolves the other one and reliquefies it.
Okay.
So if I have something that feels like something that feels like too harsh of a pattern. So my N95 has now picked up some of that color. So my N95 was for a little while working as a slightly darker pen because it has some of that other one, that N75 ink in it. But you see how it blended these together, and then that fades out into that. Did that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
Now, if it's not happening on your paper, I would experiment with some different paper surfaces.
Okay, because it's not blending very well with my copy paper, you know.
Okay. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
but in the
sometimes,
durable
very often, copy paper is very thirsty.
Okay.
And so it will. You get a mark onto the copy paper, and it just goes. And it also makes it more difficult to do watercolor on some types of copy paper. Sometimes it sort of feels like you're putting the tip of your brush down onto a sponge, and all that pigment just gets sucked off the tip of your brush.
Must be why when I'm trying to blend this, it just looks like a regular mark, you know, like it's not dissolving, it's just going on top of it. So, but I normally use one of your journals, so you know, typically
it'll do like if you transfer the sketch over to the journal, like the way that Ann Chadwick did, you can play with it over there and you'll be like, ooh, I like this paper texture surface much better.
Right.
It's just hard to put your journal through the copy machine.
All right. Thanks, Jack.
Hey, thank you so much. Really good to see you, Joni. Let's see. Let's jump over to, I see Walters has got something to share, as does Ray Bonto. Let's see. Add you into the spotlight here, and good to see you. Hold on, now you can unmute. There we are.
Yeah, hi. As I told last time, we were going on a little weekend trip, and I did do some journaling there, and especially like, well, they're not like perfect drawings, but these are grasshoppers, and that's the only thing that I could see from them. They would just I was going and they would just jump before my feet. So there were these interesting, like kind of these red, like kind of a red rusty backs. So when you were walking along the grass, then looked like just some little sparks, like kind of coming out of the grass. So these were very, very interesting.
That's cool. I love the way you drew what you see. I also love the diagram there, showing the habitat description. Oh, and
that's of the flower. Yeah, that's where the flower was. I was just showing that.
Everybody, so like, check out the curling petals that Walters has got going on here. So that's something that is really challenging for people. Look at the little subtle curls in some of those petals. You're seeing them straight on, and others you're seeing a little bit of the underside. What do you do to help you kind of think about and show the dimension in the petals like that?
The dimension, I don't know. I sometimes put the Tombow in for shadows.
I'm wondering about your thoughts about drawing curling petals, because those are very successfully rendered there.
Oh, curling petals. Well, they're not that hard.
Yeah.
I don't think they're that hard. You just have to kind of visualize the flower. It helps if you kind of look from, not just from from the point that you're standing, but just look around it to visualize it kind of a bit, and then it's easier to kind of see all the little lines where they go, and it's easier. But on some flowers you cannot see it because kind of the petals are really flat, but these ones were kind of a bit like cuppy, I don't know, like cups. So they had a bit of a curl in them.
This is really exciting. Zoom. This makes me want to do some botanical workshops, because you know, we're starting to get into to spring here in the United States, and that's wonderful. I also love the way you handled the butterfly, just doing the one side.
It was standing. Not standing. It was a butterfly sitting on a tree, and it's the first butterfly that I have identified. So I was like, I'm gonna draw it, but I have drawn a couple of butterflies, but I don't know, those are butterflies. It's impossible to identify them. I have a butterfly guidebook, but I open it and I'm confused. So in the end, I identified it as the red admiral, and I was so excited, cool, because I was doing it just with birds, and now I'm like, you can do that as well with butterflies.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, and then it's all of the natural world around you. You're zooming
Yeah.
in, you're zooming out, you're thinking in diagrams, you're thinking in quick gestures. When you just see colored, you're showing what you can see. When you get a quality look at something, you're diving in on that. I really am inspired by your approach to nature journaling here. This is exciting to see.
Yeah, and also I'm getting into some plant identification because I'm doing a little like kind of like a research for my own fun, and about the valley, like flora and fauna in the valley that's kind of beside me, and I have to identify all of the plants that are there. So I have also a plant book, and I'm trying to do that. And this was also from the same trip, and these are the blue chaffinches that are endemic to here, and they're like normal chaffinches, except like the same size, but all blue, and their beaks you can not really see here, but they are massive. They're even more massive because there are these canary pines here, and those pines are like that big. They're really like the journal here, so they need big, strong beaks to get into the seeds. So amazing birds.
Ooh, that's cool. And that 3/4 view of the little chaffinch face there, that's neat. And also love to see your curiosity chains growing.
Yeah.
Avea noticed that too, that your thinking process. Can you translate that for us? Sort of what you're wondering about,
Oh
and
yeah.
kind of your thinking process?
Yeah, I was wondering because I was drawing the chaffinches, and some canaries, canary birds showed up, and some blue tits, like chickadees of a sort, showed up, and I was thinking, and a woodpecker was pecking somewhere in the distance, and I was thinking, where do these birds nest? So I that was my question. Then I like kind of put down my ideas. Was it in holes? Was it in nests? Then which species I thought would nest in holes and in nests? But then I thought, well, I see the woodpeckers here, but I do not see any holes in the trees. So but I do not see any holes, but I found this in the forest. It's an old birdhouse, and there is writing on it here that it's Protección de Aves, so that's for bird like protection.
Yeah.
And so there's
Are you going to repair it?
Well, no, this is very old. I think it's pretty old, so I'm not gonna repair this one. This is as a souvenir, but I was thinking about maybe I should put up some bird boxes here and see what's happening. But
that would be cool. That would be really cool.
I was thinking just where are they nesting, because I haven't seen any nests and I haven't seen any holes in the trees, so still have to figure that out. And then more, there are these interesting landscapes, kind of because of the lava rocks. It's like around some volcanoes, it's black. It's like black as night. Very, very kind of black, very black, tiny little stones. And there are these green pine trees, and they really stand out. And it just looks spectacular. But even more than here, I should have gone on with some gouache, I think, because that would have stand out better. But I think, yeah, it looks amazing. Those black
is that a
lava
shrike
rocks
that you found there?
Oh yeah, that's a little shrike, but it showed itself for about, I don't know, 5 seconds, and I wrote this is like I was not very happy like that it showed itself for
but bounce back to that shrike sketch, because the way you handle, get us closer to that, because the way you handled the beak in here is just so shrikey. So you really understand, this is an awesome simplification and gesture of Shrike Bill. I looked at that and just said, that feels so shrikey. That's really cool.
Yeah, I love sharks, shrikes. So
Me
I
too.
think that's why I've got the hang of them. And some partridges, some Barbary partridges, but only showed themselves for also like 10 seconds. So this is what I saw. And then I checked and I field guide because I wanted to identify them. And this is what they were supposed to be. But I mean, I got pretty close. I noticed that there's brown here, white dots, a red beak, red around the eye, and it's overall pretty gray.
Yeah.
So I just missed these things, and the dots are going like in this way. But
yeah, I'll sometimes do that too. Like here's what I saw in the field, and then here's the bird in the book, and they don't always agree with each other. And then, sometimes what you'll find is that when you go back out there and you look at the bird again, you'll go like, okay, this feature and this feature of the bird, I had seen those, but sometimes you'll also discover that there are things that you included in your sketch that really are there in the real bird.
Maybe that like these white dots weren't in, it's a field guide. The feathers of the birds in the field guide are very clean, and but I the partridges, they ran over the road when I was going. They're very quiet. I kind of heard them, and then over a bush I was just speaking. I was putting my binoculars up like that, and because their necks already were like this, and they were checking me out, So he's a sketchy guy. And then after 10 seconds, they just that was but it was cool to see them.
That's really cool.
And after you can already see.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, finally, after 2 months, here a good observation of the hoopoe. So I'm really happy. It was very, very close. I saw it when I was in the valley, kind of looking at the plant species there. I saw it fly over, and then I'm like, I just sat there for another hour, and then I thought, well, I'm gonna go and check out, see if I can find him. And I was just looking like, this is a nice field. He could be here. I just looked closer, and behind the bush, he's going, and it was the most beautiful bird. And at that point he didn't, but when he flew over and sat on a rock, he raised his crest, and that's just a whole another thing.
Wow.
So
this is
beautiful
so
bird.
much fun. I've got hoopoe envy. This is really fun.
Yeah, but hard to draw because
very hard to draw. I mean, and with all it's got crazy black and white going on in the wings.
It's got crazy black and white, and the proportions are like nothing else because the beak is even longer. I noticed at the end that it's even longer than its head, and the crest and the kind of the neck has sometimes a weird posture, and the tail is pretty long also, and all kinds of crazy things
so much
wrap
fun.
around.
That's so much fun. And and you've seen the John Busby sketches of these.
Yeah.
In the Mallorca book, right?
Yeah.
That's really fun. That's really fun.
And they have the most beautiful like voice and song also. They're like these like hoopoe, like its name, they're kind of hoopoing, like hoo, 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 going all over the fields, and it's very beautiful.
This makes me really happy.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I hope to see more of them in the future, but they're starting to show up. They weren't here in December or November, so probably migration.
Oh boy, when migration hits your island, you're going to be You're going to be in great shape. You're ready for it.
I'm ready.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the deep dive in the journal there. So much rich stuff happening there. That's really exciting. I
Thank
should
you.
make it to the post office today to get your packet of Durline off to you. So that
No
will
worries.
leave today.
Yeah.
And this is really exciting. Hey, thank you so much, and it's great to see you.
Thank you.
Let's join Ray Bonto in London. Ray Bonto, it's great to see you.
Great to see you too. So I didn't manage to get to the Tombows, but
Oh, these have such great structure to them.
I used some black colored pencil for light values,
Mm-hmm.
and also that can go very dark. So same.
Oh yeah, hold up the dark value one. Ah, oh, this is exciting. This is exciting. Really dynamic, great structure in your sketches. That's really fun to see.
Yeah, this is a small journal, which I ended up practicing Spanish on, but
Which is a very important thing to practice. I'm also taking Spanish lessons.
yeah, it's got bits of English too. But anyways,
Oh, what a good
yeah.
idea what if I try to do journal pages in Spanish? Oh, I haven't thought of this as an idea to motivate me to do my Spanish. I like your thought here. And nice values on the sap, that sap piece on the tree there. Oh, this is fun. You really carve. You are now a sculptor with your drawings. I can feel where this wad of sap is creating planes. I can see where it dips in. Really nice value range, and also the contour lines that you use to describe this shape. Really successful.
So yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. That was really fun to see. Let's join Susan. Hey there.
Hola, ¿cómo estás? Buenos días.
Buenos días.
That's about as much as I can do. I've forgotten a lot of my
Que
Spanish.
tengo buen día.
Gracias. Those birds are so cool, and everyone's doing such a great job. It's wonderful. I have something I've been holding on to for a little while. I finally finished, so I'm excited to show it.
Oh boy.
So it's really cold out, and I want to just hibernate in my little house. So I've been kind of nature journaling my photo library and digging into some things that I have been taking photos of over the summer. And this sort of gave me a good opportunity. So Gabby Felton put together this traveling nature journal. I don't remember if she showed her page, but the idea was that you sign up and then you do some journaling in this journal with the theme of I wonder, and you investigate a mystery that you're interested in.
Oh,
and then send it on to the next person. So I finally finished mine. And the problem is that I found so much cool stuff. I want to investigate it more, but I do have to send it on. So I am going to have to do some more journaling in my own journal on this. But
yeah.
So I was looking at all my photos I'd taken over the summer, and I realized something interesting. You can see it, which is that when I zoom in really close, I have a decent camera, but not a proper macro lens. And I kind of if I had $1,000, I'd get one.
Yeah.
Because what I discovered is that in some of my very, very sharpest photos, you can see that I found some butterflies that have hairy eyeballs.
Oh, this is interesting.
And the
This
funny thing is
interesting.
I've been taking photos of butterflies for years, and I went back and I searched through some of the ones from previous years, and a few of those you can just about see that they've got hairy eyeballs. And I hadn't noticed before, even on my photos. So
I have
thought-
never noticed it.
no, so well, this like blew my mind. So I had to investigate this. So there's no butterflies out now. They're all either overwintering or they are, you know, dead, but their eggs are overwintering. So I can't investigate the actual butterflies. So I started by digging through my, first of all, my shiny little, this guy's a frosted elfin. They're very rare and endangered species, and there's a local preserve out here, the Albany Pine Bush Preserve, that among many other species they're working on conservation of. They're working on the frosted elfin.
Oh,
So.
that's neat. Fun to have the iridescent.
Yeah, I couldn't resist adding a little sparkly. So here's my sort of initial thoughts.
Fun.
And so I started digging through all my photos to see which ones I could find that had hairy eyeballs, and then I had to illustrate them.
Fascinating.
Tried to get them as close to actual size as I can. And this is the funny thing. So all the ones that I found, I'll cover my outfit here, with hairy eyeballs, or this is like about actual size, as close as I could get. I used my field guide to really like try and get it right. They're all in the hair streak subfamily of the gossamer wing family, which is like Canidae, I think. And so blues, like the Carner blue, is another butterfly that's very, very endangered, that is a big sort of conservation project for the Albany Pine Bush. They and frosted elfins both kind of use the same habitats and eat the same food plants, so it's a kind of a big deal. But the Carner blues are also gossamer wing butterflies, and I have a couple of different blues actually that I got photos of that I could see the eyes, and they seem to not have the hairs in their eyes. And all other butterflies and other families I could get pictures of the eyes didn't seem to have them. The problem I found is that lots of the photos that I took, the eye is just blurry enough that I don't, the hairs are so fine that I think that you just can't see them. So I actually don't even really know. With these guys with the light colored eyes especially, they might have hairy eyeballs that just aren't showing up in the photo because they're light colored and they don't stand out as much.
Well, it might be that you have a Sasquatch filter, which is a filter that makes the object of what you really want to get into focus just blurry enough and out of focus that it could be anything.
That could be. Well, the problem is that I never noticed the hairy eyeballs until just now. And all the time I was trying to get all the beautiful shiny scales on the wings of the butterfly. And my camera did a great job focusing on the scales, but the eye is like, half a millimeter behind that. And so the camera does, if the camera focuses on the wings, it's not going to focus on the eye.
Yes. And what a difference a half a millimeter makes.
Yeah. So here, what I need to do now, here's my plan. I haven't gotten to it yet, is I need to go find some mounted butterflies.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that the New York State Museum has some. I don't know if they've got hair streaks or what, but I think they've got some on display in the natural history area. So I want to go see if I can get there and see if I can like get close enough with a lens and see if I can see. But in the meantime, here is the rest of the rest of what I did. So I was sort of thinking about this and thinking, okay, well, so all the ones that I found with hairy eyes are in this hair streak subfamily. So is it just the hair streaks? They're called the hair streaks because they have these little tails.
Yeah.
They're sort of hairy looking. They're not called that because of the eyes, as far as I know, but most of them have these little tails. So I don't know. But what I realized also is that all of the hair streak butterflies that I have met of many different species are just super chill, and they're just like, yeah, okay, stick a camera in my face, what do I care? So they'll just hang out and they'll just like be on their flower, and they're way too busy, getting nectar than, to worry about like cameras in their faces, and you can get really close to them. And everybody else, You get too close, they're gone. And I can sort of sneak up on butterflies once in a while, but it's hard to get that close to them. So it's possible that my results are biased in favor of the hair streaks because they're the only ones that I've gotten that good of photos.
Oh, so you think that this might be some sampling bias
Exactly.
in this. This is interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, so this is when I started investigating. So I did a couple things. The first few Google searches that I did for butterflies with hairy eyeballs, what I got was discussions of eye spots on butterflies and discussions of why butterflies are so fuzzy generally, and some discussions of hair streak butterflies in particular, but nothing that specifically related to this. Finally, I eventually got sort of the right kind of search criteria and ended up finding more photos that people have taken with like better like macro lenses and things that really show well. So hair streak butterflies of many species, even ones I haven't seen, were highly represented in this, but also some other species that are totally unrelated, like red admiral. So actually, Walter's your red admiral. You can catch one of those again and get close enough to it, or see one of those again and get close enough. They've got hairy eyeballs. And I've seen red admirals around here, but they're way too flighty. They won't let me get close enough to get a good photo of them.
Wow.
And some other butterflies, like some of the white and sulfur butterflies, like my clouded sulfur back here, don't have hairy eyeballs. So I was actually correct that it doesn't have a hairy eyeball. But there just seems to be like no rhyme or reason to it as far as which ones. In the meantime, I emailed somebody at the Albany Pine Bush, Amanda Dillon, who is very awesome, who is the entomologist there. She does like cool research with bees and butterflies and all kinds of things. And she was really intrigued by this. And she actually found a paper that she sent me where some people researched this. And also apparently there are actually quite a number of research papers about this, but had some really cool results. So the first thing is you get a really cool, nice zoom in here. And the hairs are actually growing from the places where—
in between the ommatidia.
Ommatidia, there you go. That's the word.
Yeah.
I didn't want to put big sciencey words on here, so I called them little eyes. But yes, that was the word they used. Yeah, so which makes sense because why would they grow out of the eye itself? It turns out, tons of insects have these, and then other ones that are closely related to them don't. So like they had a whole chart. They had like a chart of like I think it was like 30 or so species of different kinds of insects, and which ones had hairy eyes and which ones didn't, and how long the hairs are, and how widely spaced they are, and how thick they are. And it seems like they found that for a lot of insects, the length of the hairs is close to the spacing between them. And they did some research on the reasons for that. I found the one butterfly that was in their list had hairs that were like 20 times as long as the distance between the hairs, which seems consistent with the pictures that I took, where the hairs are very, very dense looking, so it looks like they are much, much longer than the distance between them. So I don't know what it is about butterflies that they have that. It's weird. But anyway, so here's all kinds of cool results that I got from that. So I could go on for hours about this.
Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
This is really neat.
Yeah. So
what an incredible rabbit hole.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, now there's more you want to look up. Yeah. So apparently, yes, the hairs do get stuff caught on them, and that's a good thing. It protects the eyes. Apparently, there was a research project people did where they shaved the eyes of honeybees.
What?
And found they fly slower if you shave off their hairs. I don't know how you shave the eyes of a honeybee, but apparently they managed it.
Well, yeah. How do you shave the eyes of a honeybee? And then how do you measure the flight speed of a honeybee?
Yeah.
So mad props on both those points.
Yeah, I think.
But note to self: don't shave honeybee eyes if we want them to be kind of getting about their honeybee business.
But I do have an idea of how you can shave the eye of a honeybee.
Very carefully.
Yes, but you call Beanie Todd the demon barber of Fleet Street.
Ah, there you go.
So anyway, that's my rabbit hole. There may be more in the future.
That would be the way to do it.
This further, but I was very excited.
Wow.
So now I'm going to be scrutinizing the eyes of every insect that I see. There also were some spiders mentioned in this paper, but only mentioned in the sense they don't have hairy eyes. But I think a lot of spiders these like jumping spiders, they don't have the compound eyes. They have very interesting eyes that aren't compound. So I don't know where the hairs would grow if I had hairs, but apparently they don't have them. So
This absolutely made my day.
Like,
This you know what Fiona Galogli says, that the more interested you are, the more interesting the world becomes. And when you intentionally push up your own level of curiosity, you get absolutely sucked into these things that are wonderful and beautiful. But the wonder and beauty is something that we generally, our busy minds kind of keep it at bay, because there is so much wonder and beauty on our brain is something, I can't let this in, I can't let this in. But you let this one thing in, and it just changes the way that you think, the way that you see, the way that you interact with the world. That's really exciting.
I was thinking about your thing you've mentioned sometimes about like that, like you're preserving a thing and then you get that feeling of I'm done, and then then you're done. And but that actually if you push through that, there's more you can get at. And I realized, because I take all these photos of insects. I was doing photography before I was doing nature journaling and trying to draw them. And I was like really pleased that I'd gotten these like really cool close-up photos of these butterflies and how beautiful they are, and you can see all the scales and things like that. And so I felt like, yeah, like I'm done. I got these great photos of these butterflies. And it turns out it wasn't done, because I had no idea that there was even more to see on them. So, and on other, I confess that I have kind of, neglected to pay as much attention to the bees. I could have been photographing them all this time too, or drawing them. And, it turns out they've got hairy eyeballs too. So, the more you look, the more there is. It's just, it's kind of a little overwhelming sometimes.
That's really, really exciting. There is an interesting thing, the photography effect is that when we kind of go click with a camera, our brain gets kind of this very clear picture that like, okay, I've got that. Right. So if you watch people, they're in a beautiful place, they'll be looking around, then they pull out their camera. When they take a picture, watch what they do after they take a picture. They're not then looking around at the place. They're then looking for the next place to go. And there was some interesting research that was done in a art museum where they had people bring cameras with them and take photographs of the pieces that moved them and inspired them the most. And then they compared those people's memory of those objects to people who were just looking at things and didn't have a camera. And the camera really impaired people's ability to observe and remember. And then in a subsequent study, instead of just having people take a picture, they said, we want you to use the camera to record the aspects of the subject that really move and inspire you. So then they got them to use the camera in a way to really kind of slow down and think about what they were doing and why they were doing it. And that actually improved people's memories of what they're seeing.
It's a tool like any other, but I think you're right. It definitely, there is this sort of like feeling of I've got a snapshot now. I've got it. I'll remember it forever because it's in my photo album. But I think about I go to there's some museums. I love the paintings by the Hudson River School painters like Frederick Church and Thomas Cole, and we have some of their historic homes nearby that we can go visit. It's really wonderful. And they do these amazing, like enormous, gorgeous landscapes, and they just like, those are the ones that really move me. And at one point I was at the museum and I'm like, oh, I wonder if I could get a print of this because it's just so beautiful. And I saw the prints, and the prints they're not as big for one thing, but even so, it just like it's not the same. Like it doesn't capture the brush strokes or all that. Like you can see the painter's hand in those paintings in a way that you can't in the print. And it's weird, and it's just like you just have to go and actually look at it. But at the same time, with regard to the photography, I would never have noticed this detail on these insects if I was just looking at them in the field. I mean, at some point I do need to get a lens, like a hand lens or something, and because I do want to look at those things more. But the butterfly's not going to hold still for that. So it's like if I have to think of it as like it's a tool. The camera is a tool.
Exactly.
But I need to be engaging my mind and my eyes and stuff as well.
And if you're doing that, it's a really useful tool. So it is a tool that can get you to kind of get this sort of to Zerganic effect yourself, where you kind of think that, okay, I'm done with this task, now I'm on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. But it also can be, if most people who really, I think I'd make a distinction between people taking snapshots and what is going on kind of in the mind of a photographer, where that photography process is really slowing them down. And they're seeing patterns, they're seeing light, they're seeing things that that many other people don't. So you can't tell me that just because there's a camera in the hand that Ansel Adams or Rob Hirsch are not seeing the world with profound, clarity and depth. But they're not taking snapshots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a landscape photographer who has some YouTube videos that are really, really useful. And he shows a lot of his journey of this, named Nigel Danson. And he has a lot of like tips and things on how to do landscape photography. And one of the tips that he says the most important tool that you should bring with you is an apple.
An apple.
Because he says you climb up the hill, you get up to this beautiful landscape. And if you don't have an apple, you're going to set up your camera and you're going to take the photo and you're going to be done. If you bring an apple, you sit there and you eat the apple. And you just look at the landscape and you just take that time and you think about it and you think of, and I think that, it applies to landscapes, applies to everything else. It's just, you take the time to actually kind of get to know the place, see what it looks like from different angles, think about it before you start getting out your tools, because you're just. So.
I like that. I just put in my little notebook here to bring an apple. Anything that kind of slows you down. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. That, Susan, that is an incredible rabbit hole, and that was really fun.
I'm not dug out of it yet. I'm still.
Oh no, you're just yeah. You're deep in the Warren right now. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I'd like to bring on Kate to see what's happening in your journal.
Well, I've got two now. I've got one where I'm going to do like studies and sketch stuff and only sort of light media, light washes, and then another one that's actually going to have watercolor. The other news is I finally made it out of California. I'm supposed to be there for 3 weeks visiting my parents for the holidays. And due to COVID, I ended up there for 6. I didn't get COVID. They just didn't want me to get on the plane again.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I spent a long time there. But I have, on the drive back up, I decided to try and paint all the landscapes just as they flashed by. Like this first one's of sunrise in Central Valley with just hundreds of thousands of migrating birds coming up out of the rice fields.
Yes, is that with the Sutter Buttes?
I think so.
Yeah. Oh, that's so exciting. That is
so
just
little
exciting.
Snippets of landscapes and like changes in trees, and kind of trying to focus on like how landforms and sort of little biomes change, and just sort of, writing up little bits. We brought my cat. She slept for most of it and grew a ton, but
oh, this is really fun. These landscape sketches.
I had a lot of fun.
What a treasury for that drive.
Yeah. And I think I've got one more page. It was kind of fun because you'd only get a few minutes to look at each one as you're going on the highway. So I try and figure out like, okay, how do I especially like the perspective, like for this one of trying to make the lines work. And you know, they're still little thumbnail sketches basically. And I've got one other thing. I was out riding yesterday and there's these amazing trees where the trunks were bare, but then they're all covered in moss.
Oh, interesting.
And so I was trying to get the texture and stuff, and that was just from memory because, you know, we're charging along and obviously no time to stop.
So
and draw.
hold that one up with those, because you made an observation and you got it absolutely spot on. That is really hard for a lot of people. Notice that some of those ones that you're sort of seeing arching up in the back are going up at a steeper angle than the ones that are coming out at the sides. That is a phenomenon of the perspective that you see on trees. So if you've got things arching out around different points in a sphere, you're going to see the ones that are in the kind of coming towards you at 45-degree angles and going away from you at 45-degree angles. You're going to see those as shorter and also having that steeper angle, which you can get when you, if you're just very carefully copying what you're seeing. But our human brains tend to want to draw everything coming out at the same angle, and you didn't.
Yeah.
And that's why that's such a successful drawing.
Oh, thank you. I did that during, well, while we've been chatting. And then in my study sketchbook, I've been going through some of your past classes, and I decided that I'm going to try and learn how to draw canines. So I've been learning the anatomy. This is from your, I think it was the coyote conservation workshop you did. And then I took this from a book on animal anatomy I have.
Great.
Trying to figure them out a little bit. And then after that, I just have sort of like, remember my pages with all the birds where I just figured I'm just going to draw a bunch of coyotes until the shapes start to look a little bit more natural.
Go back to that coyote jambalaya there. Oh,
That's a great term.
Oh, yep. Wonderful. What a great. So your practice is you bring up a photograph and then.
Yeah, well, usually I go on Pinterest or something, and then I'll try and find something that has a bunch of photos right there, so I don't have to scroll around looking for the next one. And then even if it's not a great angle or whatnot, as long as I can see most of the animal pretty clearly, I'll just go ahead and draw it. So I try to jump around the canine family a little bit, and
yeah, that keeps it fun.
Yeah, well,
wait! I love those little studies of just the shape of the corner of the mouth too, on the bottom there.
Oh, here.
Yeah, that little smile.
Yeah, well, that's really important. I mean.
Yep.
But
I tend to sort of draw it as a little straight line going back, and it doesn't look right. It just
it's a little smile, and it goes right before the ears, but it changes.
You don't quite smile as much as seals. Seals have crazy smile going on.
Yeah, I think that's all I've got for now, aside from just some
that's
notes
a
on the
great
value
way.
thing.
That's fun.
But yeah.
Oh, that's really.
So this
fun.
is kind of like my learning book. That one's like the actually put more time into each piece.
Yeah, Ray Bonto, I think, does the same thing too. He's got a sort of a study book for kind of exercises and things, and then the one that you bring out in the field. That's really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that, Kate.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think what's nice about that is then you kind of give yourself permission to make a lot of stuff, because I feel bad when I've got like my nice watercolor paper. I know I want to do studies, but I feel bad to use something that's only got a limited amount of pages to do something where I know a bunch of them I'm not going to like and I'm not going to complete. So it's nice to have something that's like a cheap book. Like I think that one was $17, but it's got a ton of paper in there and it'll still hold a light watercolor wash. So I think that one's actually going to go out into the field with me.
Great.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a good practice. Whatever gets you making more pencil miles, and you are one of our stars of like when you kind of dig into something, you put in that. I think it's not just repetition, but what I see you doing is deliberate practice, where you're looking at what you're doing, you're thinking about, why am I doing it this way? What can I learn from that? okay, now I need to look at the muscles and kind of, oh, I'm going to get, and then it's sort of pulling you through these little lessons that you're doing. So you're not just cranking out things, you're also thinking about it and giving yourself sort of a feedback loop. So practice within the context of a feedback loop, and then you progress the way you are.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like what happens then is I'll start in an area that I like to find a place where I am uncomfortable to start, like canines. Well, cans don't make me uncomfortable. I love canines. Drawing canines, I did not love.
Yeah.
I have some really horrendous drawings of the dogs I house sit where they look like little demons, which they can be, but
they can be. When you get that Chihuahua face.
Yeah, that's true. No, these are all big
they're
dogs.
Possessed.
Well, that Chihuahuas, little dogs, they really can be. My mom just got a terrier, so that's fun. But anyways, where's I going with this? But yeah, so what I'll tend to do is I'll find something I'm really uncomfortable with. So I'm very much in like alien territory, and then I'll start to go, okay, I need to figure out how to ground myself in here and how to build those skills, because if it's something that I sort of vaguely know how to draw, like I drew horses all the time as a kid, I was obsessed. And for a while they start off being very cartoony, but you know, I was kind of a perfectionist, and well, still am. And so I didn't want my ponies to look like My Little Pony. I wanted them to be the very like anatomically correct Breyer horse.
Yeah.
So I just constantly learned the anatomy from that. But anything that I kind of am a little bit familiar with, I tend to make it a little bit cartoony because I try and draw it in ways that I've seen it be drawn before. And if I give myself like nothing that I have a preconceived notion of before and really dive into figuring out how it works, then you can kind of keep yourself from hindering it.
So you're finding these places where your palette is completely naive. You don't have to unlearn something in order to learn something. That's a really
and then the
interesting
nice
strategy.
thing is
and also like that
skills transfer over.
And you're putting yourself intentionally in that position of discomfort where you are not in your area of expertise, but you are and that's the sweet spot for neuroplasticity. So you want to surf the wave that is just outside of your comfort zone if you want to grow. If you only surf the waves that you feel comfortable with, you're repeating things, but you're not on your growth edge.
Yeah, and I think the main thing that I really had to do was teach myself that not failure perhaps, but you know, when you draw something initially and it does not look the way you want it to look, it's a very frustrating feeling. And instead of going, oh, I'm not good at this, I'm going to stop, you go, okay, which parts of this aren't good and why, and then try to fix those, and then slowly it'll come back together.
Yeah. And you can also look at it, which part of this what are the things that are working and what are the parts that aren't? And then you can really effectively give yourself critique. What a lot of people do.
There's so much writing in a lot of the notes and stuff I do where I'll try and like very pointedly sort of make notes for myself, like, okay, this doesn't work because try and make it more like this, and then it becomes more intentional. I think trying to be very.
I think it's also useful to be deliberate about, and it's not being egotistical, but to notice the parts that are really successful. Because otherwise number one, we can kind of beat ourselves up so much that we go like, oh, your brain go like, oh, I guess we can't do this. And the other is, you don't want those things that are starting to work to be lost as you're putting everything. So actually, no, that's a keeper. There's another keeper. There's another keeper.
Well, sometimes what I do is I'll put little stars or something next to the ones that, even if they don't have everything correct, if like, you know, if I look around with these sketches, like this here, I know it's not great with the lighting of that, but like this one's got a really interesting face that says fox very well. And then, you know, that one, the form is very there, even if all the parts aren't. And then for wolves, like I was looking at these ones and, you know, the space is kind of off, but then this one's got a really realistic motion and form and, you know.
Yep.
It's just, I feel like it's like building up a library of tools so that when I get into a big project sometime, I don't have to go, oh gosh, I'm worried about this because I have to draw wolves or foxes. I'll go, oh, I've done that before. I've got this sort of muscle memory of what I need to do to make them look right.
That is they're really kind of profound lessons in this about strategies for effective practice. So if folks are interested in kind of studying this more, the thing to kind of keyword search on is not just practice, but deliberate practice. So that's actually a thing, and you're seeing it demonstrated here. So that's mad props. Thank you so much for sharing that and your process and the product.
Yeah, thank you.
Looking around in the gallery, does anybody else have something that they would like to show? Oh, hey, Tracy, let's see what is going on with that. Here, you can unmute and we'll put you in the spotlight. There we are.
Hello.
Oh, let me get rid of my cam here so we can make you bigger. Oh boy.
Been working on the Eagle cam. But
That's
I don't
really fun.
So I'm pulling in a lot of your techniques because if you can see these trees I haven't fully detailed. I've got my bands where the roundness is displayed. Yep. But I'm having
I also
trouble.
like the way you're punching in those dark values between the branches in the back.
I had the hardest time figuring out how to start, and I actually just drew some dark lines, little triangles and parallelograms to kind of get me started on the branch area. And then I'm using just a regular like kids school mechanical pencil, which I'm finding is very smudgy on detail work. Mm-hmm. So I had to kind of go in with something darker and less smudgy to even see what I was doing. What do you like? I know you use mechanical pencils, but you fill them with a different lead?
I usually put in 2B lead, which is pretty smudgy, but it's very dark.
Okay. I'm not sure what came in this pen.
I was just recently looking on jetpens.com. They did sort of an analysis of different types of lead and which ones were more smudgy, less smudgy, more breakable, less breakable. And so if you do pencil lead reviews on jet pens, you can find they do some really wonderful deep dives into those sorts of things. Which brands
you can tell they love the things, art supplies and paper and everything as much as we all do. I love all their guides and tutorials. Like if anyone has geeked out on something, it's going to be them.
Yeah, that's right.
So
so I'll show you kind of the look of that eagle that is checking you out. Really, really intense. You've got the feeling of that thing wonderfully.
Yeah, and I did a little colored pencil to keep some of these edges of and I was like, it's a black thing. How do you break down that black thing and keep it? So it's pencil, watercolor, and then just a lot of, I kept my little edges with white colored pencil. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering how to transition from this branch area of the nest to the fluffy, grassy, Spanish mossy zone that they have. And you can see I kind of kept going and then I stopped. And I can tell right where my mental barriers are, like nice tree. I'm not great at doing that nice washy watercolor back here. So I've left that. So
and you don't have to, right? You don't.
Right. Well, I feel like it's like a kind of like Kate, like a full practice session. What can I pull in?
Yeah.
Because it's not about keeping this perfect. It's about
great. All right, then if you've got that mindset, then you are way, way ahead.
Right. Sometimes I keep going. Like I'm like, okay, I kind of like this, but what happens if I do that? And then I'm like, okay, I pushed that past the artistic, but I wouldn't have known where that layer was.
Susan pointed out that just having the color there in the eagle pulls our attention to that one little area of focus really effectively. Let let me show you a strategy for kind of mossy stuff.
Okay.
That you might want to play with. I love what you're doing with the Eagle Cam there. And remember,
It's so fun. I just make little snapshots and sometimes I check them out at like 3 in the morning if I'm up, like, what are they doing now? Because I love when their little heads are like. And then fun. I got a few. I want to do one where they're feeding it with their, they make tiny, like, and sometimes you can see like she tears it up and then she's like, oh, that's too big. So then she eats it. Then she tears another one and she hands it to them, beaks it to them so delicately. But you think like, I mean, obviously she knows where her beak is, but like they're tiny and fuzzy and that thing is sharp and hard and
yeah.
Yet they're so delicate.
You got to be careful when you're beaking to somebody.
Yeah. There can't be wrong beak though. That's not allowed anymore.
Let me show you some strategies on that. So what you're doing on the branches in the background, what we're going to do, a strategy for the moss in the foreground is an extension of that. And the real emphasis is in the one in the background is the spaces between the branches. And that makes those light branches pop out. And so if I draw, hold on a second, hello, and oh, actually, first let me just show you with a brush pen, really easy kind of tangles of branches where you just sort of draw in the branches themselves. But of course, this demonstration is not going to be with a Tombow. But then what I could do is, oops, not you. You fill in all the spaces between the branches. And that's what makes those so the emphasis, the thing that really pops out are those negative spaces between the branches. And then you can come along and give some of the branches just a little bit of
It is kind of fun to look at them and be like, okay, which one's on top and which one's behind?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So with a nest, I'm going to just sort of draw in some light parallel lines for some of the branches that are back here, just so that I can figure out where those are going. And then I will be doing the same sort of a thing where it's the darks that are between them. You can get the same effects with sort of drawing grasses or all sorts of other subjects, where it's the spaces between that really get the darks,
But everybody tries to draw the grasses instead of the space between the grasses. And so you get this, just sort of like drawing a waterfall. You draw the dark rocks next to the waterfall, not the waterfall itself. So I've got my little area of some of my branches here. So you see, you get some things that kind of look like branches, and then people are like, oh, that's a big pile of branches. But then you get down into this zone in front of you that is the sort of the smaller mossy bits. And what you're doing then is you're drawing in the little, you're not drawing the kind of the strands of the moss. You are, so I'm going to draw kind of a little edge of, I'd say there's a pile of moss in here, right? Another little sort of pile of moss in here. I can get something dark against the top edge of that, and then that, or this little pile of moss in here, I'm going to hide my line because I don't want the line to really pop. I want that to read as you're seeing against a dark background, the edge of that other stuff. And then I'm going to just put in some of the little spaces between the moss. And if there's a clump here and another clump here, then I might get some more darks behind that clump here in the front edge of this clump, but not so much along the top of the clump. So sometimes I'm making little lines, sometimes little dashes. I'm gonna
it looks so soft.
Yeah, so what I want to get is essentially here's the simplification of what I'm visualizing here. So I'm not just putting these, I'm not just kind of doing this randomly across the page. What I'm thinking about is that if I have a clump of moss here and there's another one that's a different size, I don't want them all to be symmetrical in size and shape, right? Let's say that is the structure of my moss bed. I don't want those lines on the edge of the moss to be what people are going to look at. What I want people to see is I'm going to draw back in here these sort of regularly irregular bits of shadow. And that is on this pile here. So I'm defining the bottom edge of this by the stuff that is behind it. Let's say this is the end of there's sort of dark nest stuff back here. I can make this kind of a rough edge here, but it's going to look a lot better than having this little kind of this looks very much like a line that I've drawn in. But if I then hide that line in dark value, so that really what you're seeing is the light rough top edge of it. And then this bump here, I'm gonna leave it a little bit light as I get towards the top edge of that. And so I have another bump coming down in here. So that means I'm going to leave the top edge of it lighter. But the bottom part of it is going to define the top edge of this one here. And then in here, I'm going to have some more dark. And as I'm making the bottom of these little marks, I'm creating the top of this lump of moss. I'm trying to avoid having all my spots be the same size, so consistently inconsistent.
Yeah, do you have anything where, like, sometimes I'm being consistently inconsistent, and when I pull my own view out, I'm like, all right, well, that's an alternating pattern. Do you like think like blob, circly, squarey, like do you mentally randomize, or does that just come out at the end of the pencil now with practice?
Sometimes, it's interesting that you ask, because I haven't really thought about it, but sometimes I'm actually verbalizing what I'm doing. I'm going. So I'm making little airplane noises and random noises as I'm doing that. So this drawing was a different drawing than the top drawing. But I'm leaving an upper zone that is not darkened. And so, and that gives you this backlighting effect. So you'll see the same thing if you've got a clump of trees that are out there on the landscape. And there's a little bit of backlighting that is going on. You'll get these shapes that
Sometimes when I get stuck on this concept, I tell myself, like, every line is really a gradient.
Yeah, you're drawing, what you're drawing are the nooks and crannies between little clumps of the moss. You're not drawing the strands of moss. You're drawing the nooks and crannies between them. And that gives it this sort of spongy feel. You're drawing the holes in the sponge, not the fibers around the edges of the holes of the sponge. Was that useful?
Yeah, I'm just tinkering with it a little bit.
And so what I'm then trying to do is get myself to be consistently inconsistent. I want, and I can, and sort of, yeah, drawing those holes there. Who is the, maybe, hold on, I'm going to just do a little search off on the side here. This may be, and no, that's not.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up just do a Google search here. I'm gonna share a screen and do a Google search. And what I did is I typed in Bruce Pearson artist new image. Look at that. So this is a watercolor, and you have this sense of that there are these grasses and things that are kind of lighter and darker. The bottom edge of this zone out here is defined by the front of this. So see how there's like these little halos around the clumps?
Mm-hmm.
So you're seeing that the top edges are catching light, and then to the interior of that, you have those darks. Let's see. Oh, view image. Oh, look at this. Look at these mossy rocks. You see there's that light halo around the outside. By the way, mad props to Bruce Pearson. If this person is not on folks' radar, guess what? This is a great black hole to geek out on. There is just so much amazing stuff that comes out of this person's brush. But look at these moss-covered stones catching the backlight. So they're a little bit backlit here. And so where the paint is going in is on the face of the rock, but not all the way to its edge. And the bottom edge of this rock defines the top of the rock below it. So this paint here, so he's not painting the top of this rock is not painted. It's the bottom edge of this rock, and where that stops defines the top of that one. So
Do you think the water's edge and some of the stones in front are a gouache over at the end?
Gouache or some other opaque. Could be gouache, could be acrylic, but yeah, that's definitely an opaque that is on top of there. That's just so cool, right?
Yeah.
Let me not sure if this will have one now. The bottom of this stuff is defined by the top of this stuff is defined by the bottom of this business in here.
Was he doing the same, like he had the landscape with that tree and then he did an up closer to that tree where he's below it? Was that the same?
I'm not
period?
sure. Not sure. But oh, some of these things are just, there's so many kind of just fun little studies in here.
I love that polar bear.
I really want to look at the real sketchbook. Well, that's cool. Look at this grid that is going on here. Way of just getting all these little moments in. Oh, this is interesting. What are you doing, Bruce? This is the same image here. This is the same image here. Same one here. Same one here. Oh, I would love to get inside this brain. Yeah, let's look at that polar bear, even though it doesn't kind of answer the question we've been looking at. That's just, yeah. that feels like a light bear because of that dark value that is next to it there.
I love the little white edge along the bottom inside where the legs are there.
Just a little bit of rim light peeking through. Oh, look at this swimming bear right here. Look at this swimming bear. Oh, oh, ho, 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 ho. Oh, that's really cool. So there is a, let's stop share. That is, there's another place if you're kind of looking to do a deep dive into inspiring things, you can check out some Bruce. But I hope that this was useful for thinking about all that mossy stuff.
Yeah, just kind of mocking up the idea here. Oh, I don't know if I can get enough light on it.
Oh, let me remove my, oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes,
No.
yes. Kaboom.
I really like the tip that Walters had it back, where he uses his light Tombow for negative drawing. That's really like, just helps you to not feel like you're gonna over heavy hand it, where you can't, like sometimes I do too strong of a pencil line and I, like my mind is flipping back and forth between, is that the negative or is that the positive? Like and maybe that's a little bit of the dyslexic eye, like I can see it this way, I can see it that way. And you're like, please choose one way and I'll work from there. But sometimes it flips on you. So I have been asking anyone that I could text this picture to, what is in the eagle's nest for dinner? It's not a log. My sister says, oh, that has to be a fish, but I'm like, its scales look wrong. I'm sorry, I'm giving you a lot of glare.
A lot of glare. Back one more time.
Yeah, let me get that light out of the way. There we go.
Oh, that is.
There's a carp next to it, but that long loggy looking thing, it's got rows of scales. So I'm like,
yeah, I would also go for a fish, a different species of fish. Also, I'm thinking I'm seeing a little dark fin on its side.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Sees the carp.
Yeah, I only put the carp in the drawing.
I like that.
We're like, how would it get a snake if it was that long and had to chew off like a middle section and fly with it? And
yeah, and for it to be, you saying striped bassie, I like that idea. Or a pike or something like that, a long, skinny fish. But if that was a part of a snake, it would have to be one whose body is so thick that there's no way that it's bringing the anaconda up there with it. And it would have had to like cut off. I'm gonna get my, and they're not real cutters. They want to bring the whole nugget up there.
Well, it surprised me when I'm looking in for details on this, because I like to take a little screenshot and then blow it up and look at it, is how many little like fish tails are just in that debris. Like I'm thinking when I draw the debris, I have to stick like a little fin in there or a tail of a fish, because there's a lot of that just in the nest. And you can see they organize like babies here, food over here.
But also don't turn it into like, here's a cartoon of a fish. Like you have to see that this is a fish. If it's something that suggests a fish, it's this thing with a pile of scales and a fin sticking out. People are like, oh, that's a fish, right? Sometimes you want to suggest and let the viewer fill in the rest of the pieces.
Yeah, and I also thought like to put the little fin in there with the other nest debris, it would be like highlights hidden picture, where like you don't really notice that there's, but when you look at it more, you're like, oh, look at this, because that's the experience I had looking at the nest. So I'd like to give my viewer that's good same experience.
Camouflage things that are camouflaged.
Yes.
I like that. That's great.
Thank you.
Hey, Tracy, how are you feeling?
Today not as good as yesterday. I also, by having surgery and being unstable, I exacerbated my back. I have sciatica from when I was thrown from a horse. So,
Oh boy.
Yeah, I just figure you put one day in front of another, one foot in front of another, and
Yeah,
um,
that's the
you
next
know,
goal.
you'll eventually walk out of this desert or
Yeah.
dark night or whatever it is. But
Yeah, instead of the goal of there's an amazing movie called Touching the Void that is about a mountain climbing experience gone bad.
oh,
And at one point, one of the people, and it's one of these situations where you're like, this is an interview of somebody who survived it, but how that happened, I have no idea. But he explained that he basically is stranded on a glacier with a broken leg, with all these massive crevasses between him and the base camp that's going to be abandoned within a day or so. And you need to get from here to there. But if you think about the big goal of I've got to get over there, it is so overwhelming that your body is just going to say, no, I'm going to curl up beside this rock and just wait for the cold to take me. But he describes sort of saying, like, my goal for the next hour is I have to get from here to that rock right there, and whatever I can do to get myself there, to crawl my way across the ice from here to there. And if he didn't make that goal, he would like really get upset with himself, and if he did, he'd just celebrate it. And to break things down into goals that you can manage, and it's the kind of getting through big things by facing that's just the next little piece in front of you. Incredibly powerful movie if you are wanting to put your toes up.
Well, today's a little warmer, but it was -5 when we took the kids out before the wind chill yesterday. So
good for you for still taking them out, though. I like that. I respect that. We can, like, people who live in cold places know how to dress for the cold. And you can go more layers, and you can go do awesome things. But it's like people who get in trouble are people like me who come from California, and we go to the cold place. It's like -5, and we go out, we freeze. But
one of our dogs, she has been like, she needs a long walk to go to the bathroom, and I'm like, well, we got the cold weather trainer. This teaches every dog to go to the bathroom fast on the walk instead of going out 20 minutes and then going to the bathroom and then walking back 20 minutes. There's nothing like some subarctic temperature to get your dog to evacuate faster.
It motivated, yes. That's that will motivate your dog to evacuate.
And the younger dog learned from the older one, like, just dance on one paw till they pick you up, or they stand there on 3, because if we walk them to the bus stop and then we got to wait there a little bit, it was getting too cold, and then you end up putting a small dog inside your sweatshirt or your jacket before you get home. But yeah, the younger one was like one day just standing there fine, and my older one, the little poodle, she's like, pick me up, ow, 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 and then the next day she does the same thing. She's like, she learned. She said, my older sister has trained these humans to pick her up. I got to get in on this action.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah. Don't get a Great Dane. It will want to get into the jacket too.
Yes.
So Tracy, I really sending you my love and your best thoughts for your recovery. And so sorry that this is a challenging time, and thank you for in the middle of that, creating artwork and sharing that with us. We really we see you and we appreciate you.
Thank you. This class is like, well, sticking with the bear and nature cold kind of thing, like this is my honey. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jason. Let's see. Our 1 hour class is now 2 hours and 55 minutes. There's still 22 of us here live. So I'm just gonna bounce over to my my gallery view to wave to you folks. I think we do have to let people get about the rest of the day because there's a lot of outside for us to explore. But hope that you are all, so be well, take care of yourselves, let's take care of each other. The more that all of us on this globe start to see past boundaries of all kinds, to take care of each other. I think that is one of the most powerful ways which we can pull ourselves out of the situations that we find ourselves in, and also put us in the right mindset for being stewards of the earth. Thank you all for being here, and be well, everybody. Evea, thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to bring you in on just for a wave out. Is it okay if I spotlight you also? Yeah, spotlight. Evea, really appreciate you taking care of us in the chat and the community. For folks who haven't had a chance to get to know Evea in Pencil Miles and Chill, it's a wonderful, it's a clean, well lighted place for journaling, philosophy, books, and more. Thank you. Bye, everybody.